chapter 8, which is right after chapter 7. It's the same day. It's like basically immediately after like Haman got executed, got dropped on the stake, and then went back to the palace. And now we're here in our first section, verses 1 and 2. Adam, you want to read those?
1 and 2?
1 and 2, yes.
All right. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estimate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai. And Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and pressed it into Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate.
Thank you. So, right here, now Haman's been dealt with. Now the king's got all his stuff that he needs to take care of, just this house and his money. And the word house, I think in your Bible it said estimate. It's basically just his stuff, his household, which would include his house, his wealth, just all of that. And so, the king wasn't very happy with Haman at the end. So would not have wanted it to go to his sons. Probably that family would have been just didn't want to deal with them probably. So who better to give it to than Esther, the one who revealed Haman's plans to him, the one who helped him find out how Haman had been manipulating him, and then all that. But later we see, and probably I have to imagine what happened here is, Esther gets this gift of Haman's stuff, and she says, well, thanks, but this wasn't just me. Mordecai was here too. Mordecai was the one who encouraged me to come to you. And so the king hears this, and of course Mordecai is now fresh in his mind. Again, it's the same day, just the day before, he found out Mordecai's role in saving his life and had him paraded throughout the city. So he's pretty happy with Mordecai right now. So he's, let's call Mordecai in. I can reward him too. That sounds great. So, and apparently she also told him that he was a Jew, and not just a Jew, but also her cousin, closest relative. So he brings Mordecai in, and this might be the first time Mordecai has ever been in the presence of the king. Like, he just was a guard at the gate basically, and he'd just been rewarded from the king, but the king didn't go out and do that. So now this very well could be the first time that Mordecai has ever met the king in person. And he gets called in, and the king gives him his signet ring, the same ring that Haman had. And this is, remember, it's his signature basically. Anything with this ring, Mordecai could, put the king's seal on any document and be like the king had signed it. And this is an honor that had only ever been given, as far as we know, to one other person, which was Haman. And then now, Mordecai now, it's basically implied, and we learned later that this is the case, but it's basically implied that Mordecai is now taking Haman's position as second in command to the king, as, a reward for, because the king now knows how great, how faithful of a servant Mordecai is to him. So he wants to reward that. And not only does he get this ring, this position with the king, Esther goes and gives him all of Haman's stuff, basically, all his wealth. He's taken over everything that Haman had in the kingdom. And so, Haman's out of the picture now. He's gone. But I want to look back. What did Haman care about most? What was valuable to him? What did he spend his time and effort doing what did he want and love more than anything was his wealth, his house, his big family, his money, his position with the king. And all these things, all these worldly things were what he devoted his life to, what he spent all of his time working for this. In chapter 5, he has this whole speech to all his friends and his family about how great he is, how much money he has, how big his family is, how many sons he has, and his just position with the king of I'm the second in command. I've got this ring that he gave me. I'm the only one invited to Esther's feast. It's just me and the king. But all of that ultimately didn't do anything for him. It was all things that were just of this world, things that can be taken away. He lost everything he had in a day. Just they'll started with in the morning when he was about to have his final victory. He was going to have Mordecai executed, and a few months down the line, he's going to have all of Mordecai's relatives, all of the Jews taken care of. He is going to be victorious. But it didn't happen. Everything that he had, because it was just for him. It was just to try to make himself great. Everything he had, he lost. None of it mattered in the end. None of it could last beyond this world. But Mordecai and Esther are different. When Mordecai, back in chapter 2, I believe, when he basically was responsible for saving the king's life, no one noticed, and he didn't complain. He didn't mope. He didn't try to find a reward. He just did his job. Haman would not have done that. He would have made sure everyone knew that he was responsible. But for Mordecai, the most important thing was that he was doing his job. He was doing the right thing. And Esther has been blessed. She's been put in this incredible position of power, and she was given all of Haman's wealth. She was offered, half of the kingdom, and she turned it down because that wasn't what she cared about. She wanted to save her people. She wanted to do the right thing. She wanted to follow God. And their perspective was the heavenly perspective. Haman's was worldly. He just wanted things that would make his life better, that would make him happier, that would make him feel better. But Esther and Mordecai wanted to do the right thing more than they wanted wealth or power or even just safety. Even they cared more about doing the right thing than their lives. Esther, who said, "If I die, I die." That's just... And they got rewarded for that in this life. And that doesn't always happen, but a much greater reward. They're going to have a much greater reward in heaven than anything that they could have had in this world. They know, everyone who's ever read the Bible, read the book of Esther, knows that they were responsible for saving the Jews, saving Israel, because they cared more about God and about their people than anything else. So, I'll head into section 2 now, which is verses 3 to 6. Aiden, you want to read 3 to 6? Sure.
Then Esther spoke again to the king. She fell at his feet and wept and pleaded with him, and averted the evil plan of Haman, and Agag, and the plot that he would devise against the Jews. When the king held out the golden scepter to Esther, Esther rose and stood before the king. And she said, if it pleases the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and if the things seem right before the king, am I pleasing in his eyes? Let an order be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman,
son of Hamadatha.
Hamadatha.
Yeah.
Okay. Which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the provinces of the king. 6. For how can I bear to see the calamity that is coming to my people? Or how can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred?
Thank you. So, think about chapter 8, because it's very, very similar to chapter 3. We've got kind of the same kind of thing. Is someone comes to the king, they ask him to do something, to write a law, and the king does, and then the law is sent out. And here, I just want to point out the difference between Esther's request and Haman's. Because, when Haman went before the king in chapter 3, he was seems like he was very, very collected. He probably practiced beforehand. He knew exactly what to say to the king to get him to do what he wanted. He hid his emotions and his bitterness and his pride, his anger, and his motive to destroy his enemies, or the people of his enemy. And he just was deceitful and just trying to manipulate the king. Esther, on the other hand, is very honest. She's very open. Like she doesn't hide her emotions. He says she besought him with tears. So the king knows exactly what she feels about it, and she lays out exactly what she wants. She wants him to save her people. She shows her desperation. She shows her motives. She tells the king exactly what she wants him to do. She doesn't hide behind any confusing language or any vagueness. Haman was all like, there's this people that live in your kingdom, and they don't follow your laws, kind of. But Esther is like, I want you to save the Jews. The Jews are my people. I can't bear to see them be destroyed. And that's very effective. I mean, equally effective as Haman's. And I think it's partly responsible for just the extent of the king's reply and answer to that. So it's in section 3, verses 7 and 8. Scott, you want to read 7 and 8?
Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hands upon the Jew. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse.
Thank you. So the king agrees. Basically says, hey, I'm already on your side. I just had Haman executed. I just gave you all his stuff. Of course, I'll do this. I mean, I already gave you the ring. And then, of course, the way that he fulfills her request is he sends them off to go write whatever decree they think is best and seal it with his ring. And you might think, reading that, did the king not learn anything from this? I mean, we know, of course, from reading the rest of the book, that it turns out, well, this is a much better situation than the first time. But it kind of seems like, on the surface, the king is just doing the same thing he was doing before, just blindly trusting the people that he's chosen to advise him. But it is different this time, and not just because Esther and Mordecai are better people. They're more focused on doing good. But also because, you know, the king has seen, like I said just a minute ago, the king has seen exactly what they want. He knows what they want. They've laid everything out before him. He knows that there's nothing hidden, that there's nothing that could go wrong. He has all the information. And now he knows what he wants to do. He knows that they're talking about the same thing. And he says, you know what? You guys are going to know better than I what needs to be done. So you guys go take care of it. And that's pretty wise. You know, so that God has, you know, been able to use him to do this great thing because he had kind of the seeds of this the whole time. Like he always looked to other people before he made decisions, kind of get their advice. And really what he needed here was, what he did in this section is he found, you know, people who he could trust, people who he knew what they wanted and that they were, you know, had the same goal. He said, you know what's going on, you know more about this than I do, you're better qualified to handle this. So I'll let you do it. Then they do write a decree that it's section 4, verses 9 to 14. And Robin, you want to read?
Yeah. Then there were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month of Sivan, on the 20th day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews and to lieutenants and the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, and according to their language. And he wrote in King Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries. Wherein the king granted the Jews, which were in every city, to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against the day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace.
Thank you. So, yeah, Esther and Mordecai, they get going immediately. They call in all the scribes, like, we've waited long enough, it's time to get this going. And Mordecai writes a new decree. It's almost the same as the last one. The difference, of course, is that instead of giving the rest of the kingdom permission and an obligation or requirement to kill the Jews, it's the Jews who are now required, and it's not just they're allowed to, they are required to defend themselves, to kill anyone who tries to hurt them. And I always thought this part of the story is pretty weird. Like when I first heard this story, years ago, it's like, why did the Jews have to fight that? Why didn't they just stop the others from trying to kill them? Whatever. And of course, the answer is just back a little bit ways in verse 8, and also it's really shown as also in Daniel chapter 6. I believe you guys earlier this year studied Daniel. So, but basically, in the kingdom of the Medes and Persians, it's kind of this kingdom that is now kind of one of the big superpowers in the world that is taken over Babylon, and with it the Jews that were taken to Babylon. And basically, they have a law that, or really, their law, the way that their law works is when the king, the king's word is law, but in a way that's really different from kind of a lot of other, what seems like a lot of other cultures, where it's once the king writes a decree, once he makes a law, it can't be changed, not by anyone, not even by the king. Like in Daniel, in chapter 6, we actually have a situation where the king really wanted to change the law, but he couldn't. I'll read that section real fast. It's in Daniel chapter 13 through 16. Basically, what would happen here, if you might remember, is Daniel is like a trusted advisor to King Darius, who ruled at the time. He was the king's favorite, basically, and all of the other leaders and advisors to the king were jealous of him. But because he was basically such a good person, he followed all the laws, he did everything, the only way that they could think of to get rid of him was to convince the king to sign a decree that said anyone who prays to any god except the king for the next 30 days is going to get thrown in a lion's den. Which, I guess, again, another example of the king listening to his advisors without thinking about it enough. But so the king agrees. I think it's kind of a similar thing that happened with Haman. Is sure just kind of stoking the king's ego, like, you're so great, you should just have everyone in the kingdom praying to you and worshiping you for a little while. So the king does agree, and then so the advisors then go and find Daniel, because they knew that Daniel prayed to his God, the true God of Israel, and that he wouldn't stop. So they went and found him and brought him before and then picks up here in verse 13. Then answered they, that is the other advisors and leaders, and said before the king that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. And then these men assembled unto the king, and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is, that no decree nor statute which the king establisheth may be changed. Then the king commanded, and brought Daniel, and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. And he did, of course. But the thing that's that kind of looking at here is the king really didn't want to throw Daniel in the lions, and he tried everything he could. Daniel, he prayed, in the mornings. Basically, from the morning they found him, and they told the king, and then all the way until sunset, the whole day, the king did everything he could to try to get Daniel out of it, but he couldn't. And it's, the same thing is happening here. The king Xerxes cannot change his decree. But so the only way to save the Jews is to write another decree. And because really the only people who can defend the Jews are the Jews themselves. Everyone else is supposed to kill them or let them be killed. So yeah, that's the reason. It makes a lot of sense, a lot more sense than I thought it did, and that just shows. If anything in the Bible is confusing, just look deeper. There's everything's in there for a reason. There's always something that maybe you missed. So yeah, that's and then again the decree is hastened by the king's command. So they're getting this decree out as fast as they can, and first it's given in the palace, and then so I'll read the kind of response to that at the palace, and then about the rest of the kingdom, which is the rest of the chapter, verses 15 through 17. Jamie, do you want to read that?
Yeah. Just 15. Okay. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's really the biggest difference between these two decrees, is the reaction of the Jews. And it's really, it's exactly the opposite of what we had before. Before, when Mordecai heard the decree, he dressed up in sackcloth and ashes. He came out into the streets wearing just sackcloths and covered in ashes and just mourning and wailing. And the same thing was happening all over the kingdom. But now, this time, Mordecai comes out and he's wearing this incredible robe that, it's a royal robe, the robe the king would have worn. It's one of the king's robes. He is, and then the city, instead of being perplexed, instead of, the Jews being in mourning, the city's glad. They're rejoicing.
Yeah.
They're all throughout the kingdom, their weeping, their mourning is turning to joy. All their fasting is over. Now it's time for a feast. Because their God delivered them. The king, the Esther and Mordecai, there was no way that any of the Jews of that kingdom could have changed it all. There's nothing they could do to escape it except call on God. The same thing that Daniel did. He knew that God could deliver him. And the Jews knew that God could deliver them. Mordecai, in chapter 4, he says, in verse 14, "For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. Who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Mordecai knew that God could deliver them. The Jews knew that God could deliver them. So they prayed. They fasted and they prayed and they cried out to God, and he heard them. And kind of another thing I want to point out is the reaction of the people around them. It says at the end, "And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them." These are people who, they lived with the Jews. They were friends and neighbors, and then all of a sudden, this terrible decree comes around in town. It's like, actually, all of these people are going to be dead within a year, and it's just this terrible thing. And so they see these Jews, all of their friends, and are in mourning because there's nothing they can do. But this whole time, they're praying, they're crying out to God, and they probably, their neighbors probably thought, there's nothing they can do. Like, what's their God going to do? And then they were saved. And then a new decree came that said, actually, these people who are going to be killed, now they can fight back. Now they are going to have the power to defend themselves and to be spared. And now all of their mourning and their weeping is joy. It's feasting, it's happiness. And they see, people around them see this incredible miracle, this power, just the power of their God, and how he listened to them and he answered when they cried out to him. They said, God's on their side. I don't want to be their enemy. I want to be part of that. And it can be really easy when you're reading the Old Testament, kind of fall into a trap of thinking that back then God was just all about judgment and all about anger and smiting his enemies, and then eventually he just decided, I've been pretty harsh these last few thousand years. I guess I should probably be a little more forgiving now. But That's not the case. Even back, back all the way back in Genesis, God wanted fellowship with people. He wanted people to come to Him to be saved. Like in Genesis 15, it said, Abraham believed and it was counted to him as righteousness. Just like, this is before Jesus came and died. Because he believed in God, he was counted as righteous. Just like we are now through Jesus' blood, through Jesus' sacrifice. God wanted people to be saved in the Old Testament. And the way to do that then, the people who had, the group that had his words, his commandments, was the Jews. And so God used this terrible thing that was going to happen to the Jews. He turned it completely around. He showed his power and his love for his people to all the world around them. And some of them said, I want to be part of that. I want to have a God who hears when I cry out to him, who loves me and wants me to be safe. God used that. The same thing happened later, kind of in the New Testament and after with the early church. Like whenever all the bad things happened to them, when they were persecuted, when they were killed, people were drawn to it because they saw these people have something. They have a God who loves them, who cares about them. There was, the bad things, but also good things. There were miracles. There were people being changed completely. They wanted to be part of that, just like here in Esther. So it can be the same for us too. Like we don't have really the level of struggle, of course, but like when we're hurting, when things don't seem like they're going to be all right, we can look to God. We can cry out to him, and he'll listen. He'll be with us, and God can use that to reach others. He'll give us the strength to continue, and he'll use our faith to inspire and reach out to others. So, it's about all I've got. It's about the end of Esther 8. I've got a few more points. I guess, Pastor Jamie, do you have anything you want to add, or Scott or Robin?
It's kind of funny how when you have the king's decrees, we kind of have that the same now. You see that with different presidents, how they come in and they set their tone and they set their decrees and they get everyone to kind of agree and sign on to a new deal and everything like that. And then the new guy comes in and does everything else and then puts new ones in. So it's kind of funny to see how that still plays out now, how that was such an active thing back then and how life-changing it was and how quickly it could happen, because obviously now it's a little bit more drawn out. But it's still the same premise of like, you come, you change the lay of the land a little bit, and then you hope it sticks. And it's kind of funny to kind of see that and just see how that affects everyone else. But the personal witness thing is a really big deal about how we act. And you think about all the torment and the pressure and the desperation from the Jews, but they spent their time crying out and praying and worshipping. And to see many of the people of the land became Jews, that's incredible. Such a good witness, such a great thing to kind of see come out of that. So, those are my two kind of thoughts. Yes.
I thought to the very end of it, when you're talking about many people of the land became Jews, we've got to remember what that took back in the day. Right?
It wasn't as easy as just like
accepting a free gift. You had to actually do something, right? So it's amazing to see like that people were able to see the presence of God so intently that they were like, that's not even a thing. Good point. I like that, bro.
So I just got final points. First is, what treasures do you build your life around? Because Haman, everything that he did was to bring him glory, was to make him happy and comfortable in this life. But it all ended up being pointless. None of it lasted. All of it was taken away just in an instant. But Esther and Mordecai, they cared about things that meant something, things that would have an impact forever. God used their attitude to do this incredible thing for his people. He can do the same with us. And the second, whose advice do you follow? Who do you allow to influence your decisions? And we have 3 examples of that in Esther. The first is kind of the first chapter where the king exiles Vashti. He listens to his advisor. It's not really a great decision, but basically what they wanted then was just to make the king happy. Like, we're going to give him a solution that'll make him happy, that'll make him, like us, want to keep us around. And later we have, he listens to Haman, who is using the king and manipulating him, wants to achieve his own ends, and doesn't care. And then finally he listens to Esther and Mordecai, who want to use his power, who want him to do something good, something that matters and will help people. And finally, where in your life can you be looking to God? The Jews, they didn't just sit around and feel sorry for themselves. They were mourning, they were weeping, of course, but they were also crying out to God. They were looking to God because they knew that He had the power to save them, that He could do something about it. That no earthly law, no law from any king on earth could stop their God, the King of heaven and earth. And that's the same for us. Is God is with us. He can give us strength. He can give us to keep going. He can deliver us from our troubles. He can help us reach out to others through that. So we need to be actively seeking Him out and wanting His help. So that's all I've got.